I will tell you a story about how my friend and I had a vacation in Las Vegas. My husband went on a business trip, and my friend and I decided to have a little fun because tomorrow we had the day off. Today we could have fun until morning. My friend Lily was very fond of male attention. Wherever we went, she always found a man. I like to play with other men's husbands. Playing with other men's husbands. I used to be a good wife. I always thought my husband was mine and no one else's. But when I saw him with another woman, I realized that it was no longer possible to trust him the way I had trusted him before. Lily and I decided to have a good time and went to a nightclub we had been to several times before. It was lively and noisy, so we went dancing. After a little dancing, we ordered a cocktail, but it was not enough for us. We sat down at a table and ordered more. Next to us sat a noisy group of young guys. They were discussing something among themselves and laughing loudly. When one of the guys noticed us, he smiled and winked at us. Lily and I smiled back. The guy turned to his friends and said something to them. The group laughed and waved at us. They invited us to join them. Lily and I decided not to respond to their gestures, giving them the opportunity to approach us. We grabbed another cocktail, each, and stayed at our table. One of the guys came over and sat down next to us. We quickly got to know each other, and he motioned for us to move to their table. After chatting some more, Lily and I agreed. The guy stood up, and we followed him with an easy gait. When we were seated, one of the guys poured us some wine. The company of guys turned out to be very sociable. They were joking, and all their jokes were funny. We had a lot of fun. After having a couple more glasses of wine, Lily and I started flirting with them. The guys noticed this and suggested we go to their friend David's apartment. The wine turned our heads, and we agreed. When we got to David's place, we realized he was a little drunk. He invited us into the kitchen. We sat down at the table, and the fun continued. One of the guys came up to me and started kissing me. He took my hands and, without saying a word, led me into an empty room. Soon, my friend and the other guys joined us. I was a little shocked at what was going on, but that shock quickly passed when a few guys cheerfully started playing a game. You know the kind. By that point, I wasn't just drunk. I was in a state of agreeing to everything. And we all did it together. Our group split up. 2 guys went to Lily's place, and the landlord and 2 other guys went to mine. I couldn't believe what was happening to me. I woke up the next morning in an unfamiliar bed, my head throbbing from the wine I'd drunk. The room was dimly lit. The windows were draped with curtains, and light snoring could be heard on the other side of the bed. Slowly, I pieced together the fragments of the night before the dancing, the drinking, the flirting, and the guys. Rolling over, I found 2 of them sleeping next to me. My heart raced as I realized what had happened, but I quickly suppressed the guilt within me. After all, my husband was the first to break the trust. It was just payback, wasn't it? I quietly got out of bed and tiptoed across the apartment to find Lily sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee in her hands. She looked exhausted, but surprisingly calm. "Good morning," I murmured, taking a seat next to her. "Good morning," she replied with a half smile. "Last night was wild." Before we could say anything else, one of the guys, Mark, piled into the kitchen. He gave us a sleepy grin. "You 2 are still here." "I thought you guys had already left." Lily and I exchanged glances. I wasn't sure if I should stay here longer, but something about the atmosphere seemed unfinished. Perhaps it was excitement, a sense that there was more to come. "Well," I said, "we don't need to hurry. We still have the day off." The boys seemed delighted with our decision, and before we knew it, breakfast was on the table. David, the landlord, was a surprisingly good cook, and the smell of scrambled eggs and bacon filled the room. As we ate, we joked and reminisced about the previous night. It seemed like we were a group of old friends, not people who had just met. Then, something unexpected happened. Mark's phone rang, and he glanced at the screen. Then his expression turned serious. "I have to take this," he muttered and left the room. Lily and I didn't pay much attention to it, but when Mark returned, his face was pale. He whispered something to David, and suddenly the casual atmosphere changed. Both boys exchanged glances, and David cleared his throat. "Listen," he began, "we've got a situation. Something's come up, and you ladies had better leave." Lily frowned, clearly unhappy that she was about to be kicked out. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Mark looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. "There's something we need to deal with." "It's not safe here anymore." My stomach clenched. "Unsafe? What are you talking about?" Before they could answer, the front door swung open, and a man I'd never seen before burst into the house. He was tall, with a menacing look. He was followed by two other men, and they clearly hadn't come for breakfast. "David," shouted the first man, his voice rough and full of anger. "Did you think you could hide from me?" David stood up, his face losing color. "Mike, it's not what you think." "Let me explain." But the man named Mike was in no mood for explanations. He stormed into the room and grabbed David by the collar. "You owe me, David." "I told you what would happen if you didn't pay." Lily and I exchanged panicked looks. What had we gotten ourselves into? Mark, who had been silent until now, stepped in. "Mike, calm down. We can sort this out." But Mike didn't want to deal with anything. "You have until tonight to pay me, or I'll make you regret it," he growled, pushing David back into his chair. He glared at us, and for a moment I was afraid he was going to turn his anger on us. But instead, he grinned. "And who are these girls? You really think partying with random women is going to get you out of this mess?" Lily threw me a look that said we needed to leave immediately. I nodded, slowly getting up. "We were just about to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Mike stepped aside, allowing us to slip past him. My heart raced as we grabbed our stuff and hurried to the door, but just as we reached the exit, Mike's voice stopped us. "Hey," he called out. "Stay away from those guys. They're nothing but trouble." Without looking back, we hurried out of the apartment and down the stairs. Once we were outside, Lily exhaled deeply, her face pale. What the hell just happened? I shook my head, still in shock. I don't know, but I think we just got away in time. As we walked away from the building, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of life these guys had. And why did David owe someone like Mike a debt? Questions swarmed in my head, but one thing was clear. I'd gotten more than just a wild night out. It was something darker and more dangerous than I had envisioned. We didn't hear from David or the others again, but sometimes I wondered what happened after we left. Had they managed to get out of the trouble they'd gotten themselves into? Or had they gotten even deeper into the mess we'd narrowly avoided? For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was in control of my life. That night shook me, and even though I told myself it was all behind me, the memories of those people and the danger they posed kept me going. It was a reminder that sometimes when you play with fire, you risk getting burned.